Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Khadijah Ali-Coleman, and I am presenting to you another speaker. And so before I even dig in and allow her to introduce herself, I would like to say that I'm very pleased for this guest to be able to share her experiences with you. I've had the privilege of interacting with her virtually over the course, I'd say almost 2 years, of a Facebook group that she has been a moderator for, and hopefully she'll tell us a little bit about that. But she's a rich source of a wealth of information as a veteran homeschooling parent. And so without further ado, before I talk you to death, and I want to allow her to introduce herself and tell you a little bit about herself before we jump into the question that she's going to answer today.
Okay, I'm so happy to be here today, and hello to you and to the listeners. My name is Phyllis Smith Asinyabi. I've been homeschooling since my son was 6 years old. I'd say even before that, because I did a lot of teaching at home before he went to preschool. My son is now 20 years old. And although that's older to be finishing high school, my son has special needs. So he is, or he was diagnosed as having Asperger's syndrome, which is a form of autism, high functioning autism, high intelligence, but that along with challenges like anxiety, social deficits, I would say, developmental delays. And a lot of people don't realize that even high functioning autistic people have those issues. So he's finishing up high school this year. If he were in public school, he would have until he was, I believe, age 22 to finish high school. Okay. So I've been homeschooling for a long time. It started, it wasn't like a burning desire of mine to homeschool. That was not my plan at all. My plan was to possibly send my son to public school, work part-time so I'd be available if there were school events and so forth, but it just didn't work out that way. You know, he did about 1.5 years of public school pre-K. He did private school kindergarten, which he did very well. But in first grade, he went to a public school, a magnet school, and he had complaints about the work being too easy. But then he had also had these other issues going on, which later on I found out were symptomatic of autism. Okay. So after a few attempts at getting him into the right school, I just decided that I'd probably be better off homeschooling. It's been a journey. I think that I know I have a unique perspective because I have a child who's 2E, which I'll explain what that means. It means twice exceptional, meaning a child is cognitively gifted, yet they might have a learning disability or some other type of disability. So that's why they're called twice exceptional. They're exceptional because of the fact that they're gifted, but they're also exceptional because of the fact that they have this learning disability or challenge. It's been quite a journey. I've done a lot of different methods of trying to homeschool. I started off doing the Chicago Virtual Charter School because I just didn't think that I could homeschool. I didn't know a lot about it, but I just felt like it would be a good environment for him to learn from home. So after about trying that for about 2 weeks, I realized that it wasn't going to work. He was not one for like sitting in front of the computer. He expressed very boldly how he felt about things. Um, and, and so I was like, okay, let me try something else. Didn't have a lot of money, didn't have curriculum at that time. I just started off like, okay, well, I'll get some workbooks from the Dollar Tree store, and I'll get some books from the library, and we'll do that until I can figure out what I'm going to do. So finally, I found some kind of curriculum online, and one day my son told me that it was VORING. So he spelled it out for me. And so I was like, okay, this is not going to work either. So, uh, I tried a lot of different things, but I would say that I ended up being an eclectic homeschooler, just using what worked. At one point, I tried unschooling. Um, that worked, but I don't know. I just didn't feel um, I guess I'm more of a traditional type of person. So I just felt like, well, what if he'll be missing something, or what if he doesn't get something that he needs? And so that's when I just kind of chose the eclectic route, and that worked for us. So that's where I have been with homeschooling. I work with the public schools when homeschooling. A lot of parents don't know that even though your child is being homeschooled, depending on where you live, they might be able to get some services through the public school system. I was able to get speech therapy for my son through the public schools, and he went to speech therapy from the time he had started when he was in pre-K, and he had speech therapy from the time he was 3.5 until he was about 12 years old.
Do you mind saying where you are, what state that's in?
I'm in Illinois. I don't live in Chicago anymore, but at that time I was in Chicago. And in Chicago, you can work with the public schools even though your child is homeschooled. The services that you get may not be as much as if they were enrolled in public school, but you can get some services. And the speech therapy was good for him. And when I felt like they said, well, he's reached his goals, I felt like he needed a little bit more. I was able to still get more speech therapy through private resources through Medicaid, which I didn't even realize that was a possibility, And so he was able to go to like a very good uh, therapist through Lurie Children's Hospital. So, yeah. So there are a lot of services that are available that I think that people just don't know exist because they don't know the laws about homeschooling for their state.
Yeah. And I think that shows how when you inform yourself, there's a wealth of information that you can find, because a lot of times we do go by what someone in another state has told us virtually is, and take that as the rule of homeschooling, but not realizing that there are different policies and laws that govern each state. And
Yes.
even more specific, cities and counties within states. I've in other interviews and just in my research, I've found just how disparate policies can be even within a state,
Yeah. I think that it all depends on where you live. If you live, say, in a suburb that's affluent and there are high property taxes and the schools are really great, you're probably going to get better services than if you live in a maybe an urban area and low income. You're just not going to get the same thing. But I think one thing you have to learn how to do is be an advocate for your child. A lot of times when I would try to get services, they would try to convince me, well, he needs to come back to school. I'm like, no, he really doesn't. He had an articulation disorder.
Right.
And he also had an issue with pragmatics, which is when a child is on the autism spectrum, who is verbal. Say my son is highly verbal, meaning that, he can speak, he has a large vocabulary, he doesn't like to talk, but he can.
Right.
And they use language a little sort of in an odd way. They sort of sound very formal when they speak. They don't know how to make that switch between being informal and being formal. I mean, the speech therapist helped him with all of those things. And, he's doing very well now.
Right. Doesn't it also apply to their ability to read subtext and just the unspoken, to pick up on those things that...
Yes, and speech therapists try to help with that, the nonverbal. My son still has issues with body language, and I think most people on the spectrum do.
Right.
But it's a lot better than it used to be. Yeah.
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 So I mean, and also he had a lot of other therapies outside of the public school. Whereas I realized once I found out I could get services through Medicaid. I mean, he had what we call they called it play therapy, but it's behavioral therapy. At one point, he had occupational therapy. So he's had a lot of therapy, and it's brought him to a good place. You know, I mean, it's taking him longer to do things, not because of his intellect, but just because of other issues that go along with being an autistic person. But I think he's doing quite well. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that, because so often the hesitancy that some parents have, especially parents with special needs children, is how can they be supported during the homeschooling journey if their child is exceptional and requires, outside of just academic and life skills, learning or cultural training or what have you, that they also may need some of the things that you mentioned. And I think that you're such a wonderful wealth of knowledge, because you have this experience that is outside of what people think of as a traditional homeschool, which is really there is no traditional homeschooling. It's really based on the dynamic of your family and your family needs. Before we jump into the question, I know this is largely due to you being a humble person, and but can you just share with us a little bit about what you've done as the group that I know that you've stepped back a bit as moderator, but during the 2 years that I've witnessed you, you share the resources in this group. Can you talk about the group that you've moderated, and if there's any other groups that you have put together or
Okay.
moderate for?
Okay. For a while, I was moderating African American single parent homeschoolers. I felt like once I saw where the group had started long ago, it was a Yahoo list, and then it's kind of disappeared. And then I saw where someone had sort of revived the group, and I started participating. I just felt like it was important to share resources because everybody doesn't have a ton of money to buy curriculum. Some people are putting their own curriculum together. Some people are using the library. I mean, like Malcolm X said, by whatever means necessary,
Right.
So I just felt like, well, over the years, I don't know, I would spend hours on the internet looking for things that would work for my son. So I was like, well, I should share those things with people. I should let them know what is available out there. A lot of times when you're a novice homeschooler and maybe you don't have a network, or maybe where you live, there is no group. You sort of like the online group is sort of like your lifeline. When I was homeschooling my son, we participated in a couple of groups, but it was never anything that was very consistent. So I just started using community resources, which I think he's actually better off because of that, because he learned how to interact with people who were homeschooled and people who were not homeschooled. I mean, he would go to a lot of programs at the Park District with public school kids. So we would go at the time when kids got out of school, and he would participate in things like basketball and dance class and art class. And at one point I take him to the library every day after school, and he was like an expert at doing this Minecraft and Roblox. And so this would be like a social outlet for him. He would show the other kids like how to up their game. I mean, and that made him feel good about himself. Like, he was knowledgeable. He could also interact with the other kids. It was just a very good experience. So on African American single parent homeschoolers, I wanted to share some of those things with other people so they would know, like, you don't have to necessarily have, some people think you have to have a lot of money to homeschool. You don't. The truth is that most of the time when I was homeschooling my son, we were living in poverty. And part of that was because of my decision to not go out and get a job. I was working from home, but work was rather, it wasn't always consistent. But I felt like it would be worth the sacrifice, because I didn't want my son to end up being a statistic. You know, that was always my fear. Like, if I put him in school, which I tried at first grade level, third grade level, fifth, sixth, seventh. It never lasted for more than a couple of months.
Right,
You know,
right.
even at one point he had told me, I want to go back to school. So I'm
Mm.
like, okay, I'm going to honor that. You know, he's his own person. I've always taught him to be his own person. And then after a couple of months, he's like, Mom, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm like, you don't have to be.
Right.
Okay. So I just had to make myself available. So I think a lot of people just don't realize that you don't have to have a lot of money to homeschool, but you do have to know how to find resources.
That's wonderful. Like you've, so just in full transparency to our listeners, our viewers, that was the question that you were going to ask. What is the truth about Black family homeschooling that folks should know? You've shared so many truths. So do you have a closing truth to share with the audience in our last 5 minutes? Because from what I'm hearing from you is that the homeschooling journey can be unique. The homeschooling journey can be done if you have a child who is special needs. The homeschooling journey can be done even when living with low income, because it's about the resources that you as a parent discover and initiate and create for your child. You also have shared the truth that it's possible to create your own curriculum, even if you go in thinking that you need to draw from a curriculum that's already in existence. You have the ability to curate and to create your own curriculum. So I'm telling you, you've given
Okay, so I've already answered the question.
you've given us
I
so
talk too much.
no, that's not even possible. And that's why I've just let you, because I'm like, this is some good stuff. So just in closing, what would probably be that fifth truth that you would like folks to know about Black family homeschooling?
I would say to not negate things that you read or that you find online that maybe the people are not Black. Okay. And maybe they write a blog or they have something, you know, to share. I mean, I look at it like with anything, you can eat the fish and spit out the bones. Okay.
Mm,
So what doesn't work for you, you don't have to use. But if it's a good idea, you know, you can use it, you can modify it. You know, if they're talking about, you know, making a history game or whatever, well, you can modify that game and make it, you know, an African history
oh,
game. You know,
okay.
I mean, you have to think creatively about things. Something else I would say is that the Homeschool Legal Defense Association is an excellent source of homeschooling information. If you want to know the laws that pertain to your
Mhm.
state, if you want to know, they have something on their website about struggling learners. They're talking about, you know, children who have challenges or disabilities. Now, I will add this. I don't agree with their it's a conservative evangelical white association. I'm
Mhm.
a Christian, but I'm not that kind of Christian. So
Mhm.
I don't agree with some things that they may say or do, but I just, you know, use them as a resource, just like I would anything else. You know, I'm not a member. I'm not a, you know, I don't advocate telling people, oh, you should become a member, although they do help you if you have legal situations. But they have a lot of good information on their website, up to date information about like when homeschooling laws change, when the laws that say what age your child should be in school, the compulsory age laws change. They have all of that on their website, and it's very up to date, up to the minute information. So I would just say use whatever resources are out there and modify them for yourself.
Thank you so much for that. You
Yes.
gave us five and one. So
5 and 1. Okay. So
so thank you so much for being with us, Mama Phyllis, and
thank you.
thank you for the continued work that you continue to do in our community. You're such a valued resource, and thank you for listening and for watching this speaker episode. And for any additional questions, we will have Ms. Phyllis's information, contact information, if you do need to interact with her directly. But also feel free to watch our other speakers as well, so that on Friday, July 24th, when we have our virtual conversations, you can join us to discuss any of the issues that you have heard in our speaker series. Whether you want to talk about what Ms. Phyllis identifies as being a truth about family homeschooling, or would like to add your own truth, we encourage you to take part. As a reminder, from July 20th to July 23rd, we will continue to be sharing these wonderfully informative talks with our speakers, so that on Friday, July 24th, you'll be able to contribute to the breakout sessions that revolve around the 3 questions that are found on our website. If you have additional information or would like to talk, contact us directly, please feel free to do so at homeschoolingbook@gmail.com. Thanks again for being part of our inaugural teach-in. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.